Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football Dill. Coach Sark, Arch Manning, the Texas Longhorns working their way through spring practice. Now, I did not need positive spring practice intel to get me to buy stock in Texas. Y'all know I bought my stock way back in January and February. But if you are a Texas Longhorn fan, you are hearing all the right things coming out of this program going into 2025. Now, I get that the national media headlines are going to be about Arch Manning. And I've been very vocal. I think Arch Manning just elevates this offense in ways that, you can do things with Arch Manning, both as an athlete and as a thrower of the football, that you just couldn't ask Quinn Ewers to do. I look at Arch Manning, he can be the engine of this Texas offense. Where go back to 2024, look, Quinn Ewers was solid at driving the car, but he was not the engine. Coach Sark had to really scheme it up. You had to rely on your playmakers on the outside to go make plays. I look at Arch Manning and say he can be the engine of this offense. And I look at the talent that sounds to be stepping up around Arch Manning. That's what excites me the most. Want to get into some spring standouts that are generating some real buzz for Texas. Talk about what it means for this program going into 2025. Before we do it, as always, just want to say thank you to you guys in it. Look, the boys have been clear. This is a team we're both very high on heading into 2025. It's been really fun talking this program. All the support in the offseason months that y'all have shown the fellas has meant the world. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Look, much more importantly, this is the best part about talking spring practice. Y'all who are tuning in probably live and breathe this program and probably have some names that you've been reading the spring practice notes to that excite you going into 2025. Let it fly in the comment section. The best part about doing this, we learn a ton from you guys as well in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. Dill, without further ado, I'm going to start off with, might be a hot take, but it's something that I'm kind of buying stock in going into 2025. The wide receiver room for Texas being better in 2025 than it was in 2024. Now, on the surface, that probably confuses a lot of college football fans. Probably doesn't confuse the Texas fans who follow this program closely. But maybe to some casual fans who are just kind of looking outside in on Texas, what do you mean they're better? Losing Matthew Golden, who might be a first-round NFL draft pick, losing a guy like Isaiah Bond. Dill, these names might not be marquee names in the national media yet. Middle of October, I think we're going to be talking about a guy like Ryan Wingo as one of the best wide receivers in the country. DeAndre Moore, to me, is one of the most underappreciated wide receivers on this Texas team, maybe one of the more underappreciated wide receivers in the country. And then let's talk about the stud of spring practice, Parker Livingstone. Dill, I'll give you the T-box here. Texas, better at wide receiver in 2025. Is that a crazy thing to say?
And no, I don't really think so. And a lot of it probably stems from Isaiah Bond not having the year I think almost anyone for the Texas program would have wanted. And it did feel like early on they almost wanted to use him as their number one guy. And eventually, obviously, Matthew Golden kind of took over. And I feel like that did kind of help the wide receiver rotation in general. But when you kind of get one of your top guys underperforming maybe the way Isaiah Bond was, yeah, that certainly doesn't help your room. And you look at what they're coming into this season with, it really does start with, I think they have an absolute true number one in Ryan Wingo, a guy who can do anything you ask of a wide receiver, can work vertically. You saw him do that last year. Does a really good job running with the football, whether it's in the screen game, whether it's in the jet sweep game. And then obviously can just run good, clean routes underneath too. And what gets interesting is Parker Livingstone's emergence as that true vertical threat, I think opens up the playbook for how they use Ryan Wingo a little bit more than probably would have had to, because you kind of look, Ryan Wingo might be the best vertical threat on this team, even with Parker Livingstone. But if they have a guy in Parker Livingstone who's being like a real difference maker down the field, yeah, I think you can get more creative with Ryan Wingo, and his skill set is about as interesting as any wide receiver in the country.
Yeah, could not agree more. And Parker coming out of high school, he was a vertical guy coming out of high school. I think I speak for a lot of Texas fans. You're kind of stunned that it's year two, that it's all coming together. What you're reading in spring practice, he's like a 4'4" guy, goes 6'4", tremendous ball skills. Especially with Arch Manning and the deep ball he can throw, that's super exciting. And when you have a guy that can stretch the field like Parker, a guy that, hey, if you're defensive coordinator, you have to account for that big body threat down the field. A lot more space gets created underneath for a guy like Ryan Wingo to work after the catch. Same thing for DeAndre Moore. there's two things that excite me about this wide receiver room. Yes, it is young. The proven production might not be there. Number one, Dill, is this the biggest wide receiver room Coach Sark's ever had? Might be one of the biggest wide receiver rooms that we see in the country. Ryan Wingo, yeah, he runs a 10.5 coming out of high school in the 100-meter dash. He can cook. He's also 6'2", 210. Parker Livingstone, 6'4". Khalil Lockett's 6'2 plus. Michael Terry is 6'4", 225. He's going to be playing slot wide receiver. And if there's anybody that I trust to use Michael Terry in the right way, maximize this kid on offense, it's Coach Sark. You have so much size, which is going to help Texas in the screen game, which we know Coach Sark wants to do. You got big bodies blocking on the perimeter, and you got guys like DeAndre Moore and Jamie French and Aaron Butler who can work after the catch. That's a really intriguing kind of combination. Number two, and you kind of talked about it with the Ryan Wingo, Parker Livingston conversation, is you got a lot of good wide receivers with diverse skill sets. You got your vertical threats. You have your multi-dimensional wide receivers that have diverse route trees. You have your yards after the catch guys that you can get the ball in space and let them cook. That's important. It's one thing to have good wide receivers. It's another thing to have good wide receivers like a basketball team that can do all sorts of different things. I feel like Texas has that going into 2025. Here's the question I'll ask you, Dill. And you're kind of a Texas offensive line whiz. I know you spent a lot of time watching them. I know you've been spending some time in the gritty garbage time games watching some of these guys that are going to be stepping up and playing for Texas. How big do we expect the drop-off to be on the offensive line going into 2025?
And I think you'd probably be lying to yourself a little bit if you said there'd be no drop off, because when you lose a Kelvin Banks and you lose a Cameron Williams and you lose guys who have been playing center and guard for such a long period of time, it's really hard to not think there's going to be any sort of drop off. But then you look, I mean, Trevor Gooseby, awesome year last year coming in spot duty. Brandon Baker and Andre Kojo, I think it's going to be a really fun battle for that other tackle spot. I kind of look like you had to get into the kind of grimy games, if you will, the grimy moments of those games, if you're trying to figure out who the guys are going to be for Texas. Because again, you are losing a fair amount of guys. But when Andre Kojo came into that Florida game, you didn't see a huge drop off. Texas was still able to kind of run the ball and execute at a really high level. Nate OU, same thing. Didn't see a huge drop off for when he'd get into the game. And then you still do have two guys in Cole Hudson and DJ Campbell who are returning and who feel like they've played a ton of snaps. I know Cole Hudson's never necessarily been the starter all the time, but he's played a ton of ball and been really solid for that team.
There's two things I'll say. Number one, let's not pretend like Texas has not recruited this position really well, but more importantly, developed this position really well. There's just not many better than Kyle Flood. He's done a great job on the trail. He's done a great job developing. And then Dill, secondly, and this is how I always evaluate rosters. Guess who has a really good feel for this offensive line? Coach Sark. He saw all these guys in practice last year. If Coach Sark thought there was going to be a problem on the offensive line, you damn well you would have saw them go to the transfer portal and grab some offensive linemen. I don't even think they tried. And Texas fans, y'all can let me know in the comment section how many offensive linemen in the portal did Texas even host? Because I don't even know if they hosted any. That tells me Coach Sark's got a lot of confidence in this unit. The last thing I'll say, Dill, and I kind of wish Cam Williams did the same thing here, because Cam Williams he's a very good tackle. It felt like there was another step that he could have reached to become a great tackle in college. Look, he's going to get picked in the NFL draft very high because those traits, and God don't make many Cam Williamses. But DJ Campbell coming back, I think, is huge, because I think very similar to Cam Williams, there's another gear to DJ Campbell. He's been a very good football player for Texas. I think he can be great. And what you're hearing out of spring practice, he's got the body right, Dill. He's got the body composition is right going into 2025. You're probably looking at an All-American guard. So, yeah, you're replacing a lot of new faces. You got some young guys stepping up. You got some guys that are taking a step going into 2025. I'm kind of with you. We're probably fooling ourselves that there's not going to be some sort of drop-off. But I look at it and say, I know damn well the national media is going to make a big deal of this. And we're going to be listening to that during the broadcast in that Ohio State game a lot. I don't think the drop-off is going to be near the way the national media thinks it's going to be. I actually think it's going to be a pretty damn good offensive line in 2025. And then when you factor in better at quarterback, better at running back, better at wide receiver, I don't think it's crazy to say this Texas offense gets better in 2025 from a team that was really damn good in 2024. Defensive side of the football, Dill, front seven is elite. Now you have a question mark about the inside of the defensive line. Do we have the Byron Murphys, the Alfred Collinses that we've had the last couple of years, those true presences, disruptors on the inside? That is to be determined. You probably don't have it as much as you had in the past, but on the edge, you're about as good as anybody in the country. And when you look at it and say, hey, if we even have question marks about getting to the quarterback, of which I don't think you will, when you have a guy like Colin Simmons, Trey Moore, Ethan Burke, Colton Vasek, but you got a guy in Anthony Hilldale that if you want to get after the passer and you want to put together some pressure packages, there's probably not an off-ball linebacker that's better getting after the passer than Anthony Hill. I look at the front seven and say this is going to be a damn good front seven in
But
2025.
even just replacing the TFLs, like Anthony Hill, you talk about a playmaker. It's not just blitzing. I mean, being able to get in the gaps and make plays. And then I even look at maybe what they have at edge in terms of like Ethan Burke and Colton Vasek, two guys I think you'd be very comfortable putting on the inside and rushing the passer in certain spots. So again, like I probably think it's a bit more of an issue than you. Like you want to have a real disruptor in the middle. I think you look at the really good teams in the past, they've typically had somebody who's at least a fringe first rounder in that inside. And again, Alex January, he's probably the guy I'm looking at. Like I think the portal guys they brought in, like you're going to get solid enough football.
Well, here's my thing with the portals. I think they brought him in to do the job. Like these both Claude Brevard and Travis Shaw are run-stopping interior defensive linemen. And like you said, all right, we're going to win on first and second down, get them off the football field on third and long, kick a guy like Colton Vasser, could kick a guy like Ethan Burke down to the inside. And I look at it and say, okay, you might not have the disruptive nature against the run game, but they're going to do their job too gapping. But you have a ton of juice. And a guy like Lance Jackson, at some point, Lance Jackson will be playing on the end. This is a big dude. At some point, he's going to be on the inside of the defensive line and probably could do it in spot duty as a freshman. And like you said, Dill, Alex January excites me. Like I thought the true freshman tape was actually pretty dang good for a guy that was probably a year away from getting on the field. Really excited about year two.
I mean, if they get him physically more right, and he just looked a little bit small, probably wasn't that, like, and he wasn't coming in as like that 5-star instant impact guy, but I thought you saw like some skill set, you saw some quick twitchiness off the ball and like some athleticism from the middle. He's the guy I'm kind of looking for to step in and kind of fill that void. And again, Justice Terry, he might just be that hammer too. I don't know. I mean, it's like I saw what he was coming out as an 8th grader in football. Like, that kid looks a little bit.
Could have played in the FCC as an 8th grader if you wanted to.
So it's like he might be the guy, but that's probably the one thing that, like, again, because it's not like Texas like fighting for relevance anymore. We know they're an incredible team. They're going to be an incredible team if they don't get great defensive tackle play. But again, you're talking like what separates them from the national championship. Agreed. It is kind of on the margins. So that'll be a position I think we'll be inherently curious about is who in that middle can step up and be a bit of a difference maker.
I'm happy you brought up Justice Terry because we were about to move on without, I don't think uttering his name. We would have caught. We would have caught
some. Went on the trail. Everyone thought it was George, and
we would have caught some mad heat if we didn't mention Justice Terry. Justice Terry will certainly factor into the interior of the defensive line. Secondary shakeup, which I think is really interesting. And here's my take on it. You have Jalen Gilbo moving back to the boundary or moving out to the boundary quarterback spot, it sounds like. Look, I think Wardell Mack, when he committed to Texas, I was like, this kid's born to play the nickel. I think he certainly can. It's a puzzle you have to put together, but you have a lot of really good puzzle pieces. And now the goal from April 2nd to when we kick off against Ohio State is how do we get the best 5 on the football field? And when you have as much talent and as much versatility, it's not that big of a problem to figure out, but you want to answer it. Is Jelani McDonald going to move to nickel and you get Derek Williams on the football field? That's probably the combination to me where it's like, that's your best 5. Like, at least the way I look at it, Derek Williams is one of your best 5 defensive backs. Figure out how to get him on the football field. You have so many guys that can do so many different things that shouldn't be a problem. I'm very interested to see how this secondary shakes out in 2025. The one thing I'll say, believer in it, because the step that we took from 2023 to 2024 in the secondary was elite. It was a problem for Texas in the secondary in 2023. It was a strength of this football team in 2024. I don't have many questions that it's going to be a strength of this football team in 2025 either.
But I will say, I'm very surprised to hear about the Jalen Gilbo move. I
Yeah,
just
dude.
look like when you play that high of a level at that spot last year, it's just like, and again, like I'm not saying he's like the best nickelback I've ever seen,
He
but
was
he
damn good
was
though.
really, really good. And it's
Yeah.
like, do you really think you can get better play from almost anyone out there? And then I look, it's not like he's coming in like what Jahdae Barron was doing maybe last year, where you felt like you had a bit of a deficiency. Maybe some of those portal guys didn't exactly work out quite like you would have wanted. So they put Jahdae Barron. And again, unique player to be able to just move from position to
Yeah.
position and like not really have any sort of drop off. I just look like where you can't have Jalen Gilbo sit in the bench. I think he needs to be playing, but also like Malik Muhammad, he has a spot pretty much locked up, I'd say. And then
Yeah.
you look Kobe Black, even like Cade Phillips, like it's just a really talented cornerback room. I will say, like I'm more in Kwiatkowski, I trust, because he did
Yeah, it's
really
that's
get
kind of
that
where
room
I'm coming
going.
from. It's like, what are
But I
we
am
gonna be?
surprised to hear it.
What are we gonna be sitting in our basements in Rochester, New York, and telling him you're doing it wrong? Like I trust it. I trust it. I ain't gonna
That's
tell him
what
he's
we
doing
do
it
as
wrong.
fans, though. Every coach is always wrong, and that's just
Yeah, I'm gonna trust the process with what Texas is doing in their secondary. We'll
yeah.
close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it again. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.